What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Fantasy Football Over Analysis. Today we're talking about the Carolina Panthers, their fantasy relevant players, and whether we are targeting or fading them in our drafts this summer. At quarterback, it's hard to get excited about Bryce Young. Young, through his first 3 seasons in the NFL, has finished as a low-end QB2. The improvements that he's made have been very minimal. Last season was the first year that he made it over the 20 touchdown mark. But there's been multiple times throughout Young's career that he's played poorly enough that the Panthers have had to give real thought to benching him. So Young last season, in what would have to be considered his best year as a pro, like I said, he does surpass the 20 touchdown mark for the first time in his career, but there were only 4 games throughout the entire season in which Young was able to eclipse even the 200 passing yard mark. And Young also, while not a complete zero in the rushing game, doesn't give enough there that it makes up for his shortcomings as a passer. And it's not like Young has nothing to work with at the skill positions. The Panthers obviously invest a first-round pick in Tet McMillan last year. Jalen Coker, another guy that's made good strides in his development. So Young has weapons in the passing game, but he's been unable to fully take advantage of them. And this really has to be considered a make-or-break year for Young. If he doesn't put it all together and start delivering some difference-making performances for the Panthers at the quarterback position, then they're going to have to revisit what the future of that position for them looks like next year. 2027, obviously loaded draft class with quarterbacks. So the Panthers, are they going to commit long-term to Bryce Young, or are they going to just reload and start over at the end of the season? We'll get the answer to that as the season goes on, but I myself don't want to be invested in Bryce Young. I don't want to be a part of that ride this year. So he's going to be a fade for me. There's no reason to draft him. There's much better late round options at the quarterback spot. The running back position is interesting for Carolina. Chuba Hubbard returns once again as the starter. Hubbard last season was a disappointment in fantasy. He fell off from his RB13 finish in 2024. Last season he finishes as the RB38. He was inefficient early in the year, then he suffers an injury, and then he loses the backfield to Rico Dowdle. So good news for Hubbard is Dowdle is gone. He's now with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Bad news is that Hubbard is still not particularly efficient, and he's someone that the Panthers could be looking to replace with their former second-round pick, Jonathan Brooks. Brooks, who missed his first 2 years with injuries, now could finally be getting close to 100%. And as the year goes on and he gets more and more integrated into the offense, he could slowly start to take that backfield away from Hubbard as the year goes on. And make no mistake, Jonathan Brooks is the guy that I want out of this backfield. Brooks going as the RB39 right now is an awesome late round running back target. Brooks is someone that has a true 3-down skill set, and this is an offense where Dave Canales loves to run the football, especially when his quarterback is Bryce Young and he's got to operate around his limitations. That running game is going to be so much more important, so much more key to Carolina's success. So for where he goes in drafts, Jonathan Brooks is someone that I love targeting. Chuba, meanwhile, coming in as the RB29, he profiles as your average dead zone running back, the guy that goes in the early RB3 tier, the Tony Pollards, the Ramondre Stevensons, these guys that are all floor plays, but the floor is like low end, 10 to 12 points per game, and there's just no upside, no ceiling for Chuba. And if he does come out and he's as inefficient as he was last season, then it's just going to give the Panthers that much more incentive to give Brooks the opportunity to be the guy this year. And then at wide receiver, Tet McMillan comes off of an impressive rookie season where he finishes as the wide receiver 16, catching 70 passes for over 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns. The problem with McMillan is that his upside is very much capped by Bryce Young. McMillan last season had 7 games where he had under 50 yards receiving. And unfortunately, these are just the lines that are going to happen from time to time when you have a quarterback like Bryce Young that, as I mentioned earlier, struggles just to hit the 200 yards per game mark. So while we love everything about McMillan as a player, you have to wonder what the upside really is with him in fantasy this year. He's being drafted as the wide receiver 15 right now, and that could be his ceiling as long as Bryce Young is the quarterback. So while I would take McMillan over guys like Garrett Wilson, Jalen Waddle, T. Higgins, I would not take him over the likes of Emeka Egbuka, Luther Burden, Ladd McConkey. These are all guys that are just playing in better offenses with better quarterbacks attached to them that are going to have an easier time reaching the floor that McMillan showed last year as the wide receiver 16, but also have a much better path to exceeding that floor and finishing as wide receiver 1s. So while I don't think that McMillan is a bad pick by any means, I do think he's going to be frustrating at times this year because of the Bryce Young thing hanging over him. So I think it's going to be at least another year before we can really talk about potentially seeing the best of Tet McMillan. For the rest of the Carolina receivers, I do like Jalen Coker as a sleeper. Coker has shown some flashes in each of his first 2 years. Again, you just wonder what kind of ceiling that he can have as long as Bryce Young's the quarterback. Xavier Legette, however, not somebody we need to be involved with. Legette, a former first-round pick, has shown absolutely nothing in his first 2 years. And at tight end, we're not worried about Tommy Tremble. We're not targeting Jatavian Sanders. These guys haven't shown a lot, and again, the passing volume in this offense, there's barely enough for me to feel good about drafting Tet McMillan, barely enough for me to feel okay about a late-round pick on a guy like Jalen Coker. There's definitely not enough for me to go anywhere near the Carolina tight ends. And that's going to do it for this one, guys. So with the Panthers, really my primary target here is Jonathan Brooks. I really think he's got a great chance to end up as the Carolina RB1 as we get deeper into the season. And by the end of the year, if he does take the job away from Chuba Hubbard, that's going to be such a great later round value that you're getting at the running back position. Tet McMillan is the only other guy here that I really have any kind of significant interest in, but even then he comes with a couple of red flags, all tied back to the quarterback position in Bryce Young. But I thank you guys so much for watching, and we will talk to you next time when we go over the Green Bay Packers.